What is up, fellas, and welcome to another episode of Rewriting History with me, the Goob. Almost didn't make it. Oh, dang it. Almost didn't make. I was having some tech troubles, man. I had everything ready to go. I just needed to organize my files, and my computer just would not let me. Just wouldn't let me. But I got it. We're here. We're good. Now I just need to pull it all up. So I walk my dogs in a local nature park usually every day, and now it's gone. And someone paints rocks. Still having some minor tech issues. Bear with me. Someone paints rocks and hides them there, I guess, for like kids to find. They like hide them in tree stumps and stuff. And I saw this one. I've been seeing them for years, and I usually just leave them there. But it's a happy little rock with a happy little flower on it, and I liked it, so I kept it. I'm trying to get my screen up. Just nothing is cooperating today at all. What is going on? Give me a minute, fellas. I'm struggling here right at the moment. I'm starting off struggling. I'm just trying to share my screen with you, and it doesn't want to let me right now. Good start. Solid start. So today, I'm going to be talking about Peru and lost civilizations. What is going on? Here we go. Finally. Okay. And now I am not going to close this image until I've gone through every single one of my photos, so we don't have the problem of me not showing my screen again. It's up. It's going to stay up till the end of the show. All right. So starting off, I'm just highlighting some of the impossibilities that we find in Peru. I mean, you look at this, there's a fracture in this rock. I've shown this before, but there's a fracture in this rock. A tiny little chip came out of the rock below, and look how perfectly the rock above is meeting that and fitting into that chip. It makes absolutely no sense through traditional means. And then you come over here and you look at this, there's a tiny little ridge. There's a little ripple there in between the seam of the blocks above, which maybe makes sense, right? So if you put, say, the block over here on first, you create the seat, you make it fit perfectly with your traditional means, you're pounding with your hammer stones until you have this perfectly fit block, okay? And then you come in with the second block, and now with this block already in place, you're making a seat for the second block. So ending up with a tiny little ridge there somewhat makes sense. But how do you explain it in reverse when you have the top block coming on down? It's not like you can set that block on half and make a seat and then do it. So this whole thing right here, it's impossible. It doesn't make any sense through traditional means. We have no idea how this was done. And there's examples like this all over Peru. Then we have the vitrified glassy surfaces, right? This is a cave near Sacsayhuaman, near Cusco. And it's not actually vitrified. It's not actually melted with heat. The chemical makeup of this surface is different than the limestone beneath it. On top of that, if you apply heat to limestone, it destroys it. It doesn't melt. It turns into quicklime. More of these, the ridges just, again, this doesn't really make sense to me through traditional tools. You have these perfectly seated everywhere. You're certainly not achieving that by rubbing blocks back and forth, because that would knock off these ridges, which is the mainstream suggestion. Yet another, little imperfection on this block that's perfectly matched on the other block. You simply are not doing that with traditional means. That's just not happening, right? A closer view, tiny little imperfection, and it's matched on both sides. That's not happening through traditional means. And then more of these vitrified surfaces that you find all over Peru, which we can't explain. And then you have in the Cori Concha in the museum in Cusco, this little puma or whatever it is certainly doesn't look like traditional means to me. I don't know what is going on here, but that doesn't look like chisels and pounding stones. So just highlighting, regardless of who did these things, we cannot explain them. Whether you want to look at this through the lens of the Inca 500 years ago or some lost civilization, we have no idea how this stuff was done. This is at the quarry of Olente Tambo. And I didn't save a big zoomed out picture. This is the best I've got. But you can tell they are removing large amounts of stone from the bedrock mountain here. Large amounts of stone have been cut away. And yet, despite several feet of stone being removed, all of these fissures are only about like a half-inch, quarter-inch deep. So all these natural fissures, if that's what they are, right, all happen to run to these perfectly flat surfaces that were cut out and only go a quarter-inch deeper than that. On top of that, those look awful lot like chisel marks on the underside of this, on the layer beneath it. That looks reminiscent of chisel marks. Could this be like geopolymer that's been plastered over this mountain? Kind of sounds ridiculous, but these pictures look a little bit ridiculous too. Again, it's just inexplicable things in Peru. I wanted to highlight a couple of those before I get into the bigger picture, just emphasizing that we don't understand Peru, regardless of how you want to explain it. Here's a map showing how many different cultures were in Peru. You hear of like the Inca, you hear of the Wari, you hear the Tiwanaku, you hear the Chimu and the Chan Chan and stuff, but that's about it. You don't usually hear about all of these other cultures, but there's a lot going on in Peru. This image won't work for whatever reason. I've tried fixing it. Tech issues. It's a full image. It just won't display. This is showing the Inca territory and by time. So, they were centered around Cusco. Cusco's right here. That ended up becoming their capital. Nazca is not far by with the mummies. In Lake Titicaca on the right side over here, well, there it is right there marked, Tiwanaku, which they didn't get to until fairly late in their reign. They didn't discover Tiwanaku until about 1470 to 1490, and the Spanish came very shortly after that. Here is the Wari Empire in this area, and here is the Tiwanaku. Again, you have Lake Titicaca there. I'm just trying to give you, a kind of general layout of things. Cusco would be somewhere in this region here in the Wari area. Another map, just the Tiwanaku sphere where Lake Titicaca is, and they don't show Cusco on here, but all right. So now that we've given a little bit of an overview, I want to try and establish a connection between Tiwanaku, which is what we're looking at here, and Cusco. And this may seem obvious to a lot of you, good for you guys, but that is not what's accepted by the mainstream. These are isolated sites that have no connection, that were created by two different cultures. So let's go ahead and evaluate that and see how well that holds up. Here we have some T-clamps at Tiwanaku, some more T-clamps at Tiwanaku. Here's an old photograph or sketch rather of a massive block. This is the model stone. So they think that this was like a scale model of what they were building potentially there. You see the little stairs, obviously those stairs are not built for people. That's a big old model stone. There's an entire building at Tiwanaku, a small building, but full of strange stones. And I don't have a ton of pictures from it, but here's an example. And we'll see, I'm going to show pictures from the Coricancha, loose stones from the Coricancha. And if I didn't already know which stones belonged to which sites, like if you just mashed all the pictures together and showed them to me, I wouldn't be able to tell you which are which. They look so very similar. Some of these C-clamps, right? And the holes that are drilled through at bends. So it goes down on one side and then in on the other side, and it meets at like a 90-degree angle. There's a lot of those here. This is the bottom of one of the gates. And notice that little hole here. We'll come back to that in a moment. Okay, we're back to it right now. So I had talked about this before, and I was speculating about what the heck this is, because they're on the bottom of all of the gates, and they have all these little holes as well. And so there's a cone drilled out of the bottom of all of the gates, and then a secondary hole drilled into the cone. We have no idea what this was for. They speculate that it was, for securing the gate to the ground somehow, which I kind of am also speculating that's what it is. I don't know what else it would be. But again, these gates are like hundreds of tons. You're having to lift a gate straight up and lower it straight down onto a thing, unless maybe they're like pouring, they're pouring something into there to go into the ground and into there. And so I don't know. Interesting feature, though, I thought. And then I included the little descriptions here because they describe all of these very strange features. They attempt to describe them in mundane ways. The nubs are just to handle the stones. The notches are just so you can get some leverage on these stones. Nub over here, notch over there. This channel that's carved around, don't even worry about this little part here, but the channel that's carved around, that's obviously just to wrap a rope around it so you can lift it. They did all of that work carving that beautifully rounded, curved channel all the way around just so they could wrap a rope around the stone and lift it. Why don't all of the stones have nubs or bosses or channels for ropes? And why are they devoid on some of even the biggest stones? Who knows? It's just silly, to me, the way they try and dismiss these things. Here we have another one, a big one of those C clamps. They describe it as a diagonal channel. I think it's curved. This one might be straight, not 100% sure, but on a big block at Tiwanaku, and you can see all the steps and windows in the back. This is interesting. They describe this one as another hoisting grip. It's all just for lifting the stones. They carved this incredibly complex shape here, which here it is, a diagram. So this is open in the back, right? But they carve straight down and straight back and across just so they can put a rope in there and lift this stone up. Absolute nonsense. And then more of these T-clamps, more of these I-clamps on a canal in Tiwanaku. This is also a block at Tiwanaku. And now we're going to shift over to the Coricancha. Here's a block at the Coricancha. Like I said, if I didn't already know where these blocks belonged, I would not be able to tell the difference. This one doesn't really look like anything else. It's just a very interesting one. Seems, there's pretty clear evidence of rotation. Here, it's obviously more worn. So like this is like some kind of stone lever or something, or perhaps some part of a hinge or something. Pretty interesting. And then more of these T-clamps with drill holes. And there's plenty more examples from Tiwanaku of stones that look like this. The holes drilled all over them. Very clean right angles, flat surfaces. Very, very reminiscent of the blocks at Tiwanaku. Very reminiscent of them. And here's, again, they love these 90-degree corners. They're coming in and it curves up. And it seems like these are rounded. It's not like you're taking a straight tube drill and drilling one hole and then another hole. Like it seems like they actually follow a curve, but that's kind of hard to determine from pictures. So we're seeing all these similar blocks in Tiwanaku and in Cusco at the Coricancha. Same style blocks, but we showed that the Inca discovered Tiwanaku, so couldn't they have just seen Tiwanaku and been inspired by it and brought this style back? I mean, despite the fact that this is their capital city and this is their capital building, and I would kind of expect it to have already been built at this time, or at least started construction, seems like a bit of a stretch. But then we have this. We have the vitrified glassy surface on a sandstone block at Tiwanaku. And I very strongly suspect that this is the exact same substance that's been applied to this cave that is also near Cusco, also near whatever, it's near Cusco, right? The area we're talking about. So this is now another layer of connection between Tiwanaku and Cusco, which according to the mainstream are completely separate. They never had any connection. I don't actually remember the exact location of this. This is Inca. I believe it's somewhere near Cusco. And then we have drainage blocks that look very similar at Tiwanaku. This is maybe a more flimsy connection because it's just a U, right? If you're trying to transport water, kind of makes sense that you would use a U. But yet again, just another little connection there. And now we have the Wari Archeological Site, which if I go back to these maps real quick, actually, I think I have I thought ahead and I put the map after that image now that I'm thinking about it, right? And it's the image that doesn't work. So I can't even show you. Fantastic. I wanted to show you where this is located. It's a little bit to the west of Cusco, slightly southwest of Cusco. And originally, I was actually going to highlight these blocks as clear evidence of non-Wari work, of work that obviously wasn't done by the Wari. This is obvious evidence of pre-Wari, and Wari is pre-Inca, so pre-Inca work. But I learned some new information that might change that a little bit. But again, just another potential connection, potentially spanning all the way from Tiwanaku all the way over to the Wari capital with these irrigation blocks. Right. And I would love to get like measurements on these things. I would love to know how straight are these holes? How consistent are these holes? Are they tapered or do they go straight through? Are they straight? Are they actually the same size? Things like that. It would be great if someone could go. Weird Old World, if you happen to be watching, I would love you to go to this Wari Archeological Site, and I'll highlight why now. So when I first looked this up a few months ago, this is what I found. And this was effectively what I thought the extent of this site was. This is really all you're going to see. And if you dig a little bit, you will find a couple other images that show, some of the other structures around here. And look, here we have what I would describe as megalithic construction. These are very clean, very square, flat blocks. But all you have are these two little boxes over here and this little box over here. And that's all there is. That's all there is to the Wari Archeological Site. Well, it turns out that is not actually the case. In 2014, they started another excavation there and they discovered a whole nother enclosure, but they didn't just discover that. They discovered a whole lot. They dug real deep down and they found all kinds of megalithic construction. This is like 3 meters below the soil, by the way, so it's buried pretty darn deep. And there's smaller, looser fitted stones here, but then you have like some big square stones, obviously the lentil up there, but like these are pretty clean, pretty square, pretty large blocks. Some of these in the background, look at that, and again, these boxes that I don't know what they are, but they built these boxes with these large slabs. Another box with large slabs. Here's just a bit of an overview. By the way, to get these pictures, you have no idea how much I dug to get information on this Wari site. I reached the end of the Google results countless times. I eventually found this on a Age of Empires forums. Age of Empires forums is where I had to go to get more information on this. They did these excavations in 2014, and the Minister of Culture put like $1 million towards continuing these excavations and was supposed to launch this big campaign to drum up tourism and attention to this spot. But it doesn't seem like that ever actually happened because I was looking up all the researchers involved. I was going through their catalogs of research, like trying to find anything referencing. I dug so hard, and this stuff, like, I don't know. I think whatever websites it was originally on must be defunct now and gone, because again, like the only reference I could find was on a damn Age of Empires forum, and I had to dig so hard to find it. But look at this construction. These are impressive. This is not a culture that is not capable of working stone, which was not only my belief, but the mainstream belief. The mainstream belief was that this is what the Wari were capable of. These loose stone block walls up here. But we're finding quite a bit more at the Wari capital. You can see they're digging down pretty darn deep here. And I mean, look at that. That's a big ass stone up there. That's a big ass stone. And those walls look very nicely fitted together. They're big, thick, tightly fitted walls with big stones. This is a complete departure from what archaeologists themselves thought the Wari were capable of. And like I said, there's like nothing about this. There's no news about this. There's no nothing. There was a book written in 2018. I forget the title, but it was effectively like radically reevaluating the Wari and their capabilities. I mean, look at this. This is very, very impressive construction here. Very impressive construction here. It's also buried really deep. You know, it's kind of hard to make out what's going on with these walls. Like, are these mud walls? Is this a reconstruction? It looks really, really, really clean. Like, I'm not entirely sure what's going on here. Again, finding information about this, but it looks like this looks like mud. That doesn't really look like stone. So does this. So I don't know exactly this part, but yeah, that's some clean work, fellas. That is some clean work. And it's very, very slab rectangular, you know, not like the polygonal stuff that you see elsewhere. Here's a canal there, similar to Pumapunku, not identical though. Little donut weapons, tunnels. Right. So is this something that the Wari would be capable of? Well, now I'm not so sure that they wouldn't be capable of this. Initially, this was going to be like one of my stronger points of this is obvious pre-Wari work. These are obviously leftover aqueducts, I assume. I don't even know for certain that these are aqueducts, but I'm assuming this is for water transport. That was pre-Wari. But after looking at this stuff, I am not so sure that the Wari couldn't have done this now, right? And then you also have this, which the archaeologists again go, this is not Wari. This is the Great Wari Wall. That's not its actual name. That's just what I called it. But you see these megalithic structures over here, megalithic wall over here, and then all of the loose fitted stone, which goes, it's a long wall, I think a couple miles. And some archaeologists suspect that this is a later Inca addition, which I'm a bit skeptical of, but it's clearly not Wari. The Wari weren't constructing like this. So either this is that pre-Wari civilization or, you know, it really is an Inca addition. And then on top of what I already showed you at that Wari archaeological complex, to further, you know, suggest that maybe they were creating those aqueducts, here we have these giant stone slabs. No idea what these things are for, but this is a monster. It's like 7 meters long. It's huge. And there's several of these. I don't know exactly how many because it's not listed. I mean, again, no information on this whatsoever. But there's at least a couple. There's at least 2, and I think there might be like 3 or 4 of them. So yeah, is this some remnant of some lost civilization, or did they construct this? Considering the other buildings, which I'm assuming they did construct, you know, maybe the Wari were far more capable than we think. And this is something important to understand about Peru, is that like the level of archaeology that's been done there, it's just not great. There's so much that we do not know, which is another reason why it's so easy for me to accept the idea of a lost civilization. It's actually quite easy for me to accept the idea of a lost civilization in general. Gulag never presented it, but he was talking a while back about the, I forget what they're called, but on the Isle of Pines, these mounds, these earth mounds with concrete and iron in the center of them. And it's very obviously man-made. It's clearly man-made. There is no other option. There is no other alternative other than aliens, I suppose, but it's obviously man-made. And there's no sign of man on the Isle of Pines. Like the civilization that created all of these mounds, it doesn't exist. There's no sign of it. So the idea that civilizations can be lost, it's pretty easy for me to accept. And the idea that like we just haven't looked hard enough. We just have not done the work in Peru. The state of archaeology is not. It's just like the confidence with which things are spoken about Peru. We just don't have the information to have that confidence. Okay, so now I'm switching back to the Cusco area. All right, and this is at Sacsayhuaman. This is near Sacsayhuaman, and this is a massive. I did like the math on the volume of rock before. It's huge. Basin that is carved out of the andesite bedrock. Now, the Inca were around for 100 years. So if the Inca were to have done all of the work that is allegedly Inca, they would have had to have quarried and cut and removed all of this bedrock, this massive bedrock. It's like 60 feet deep. I forget how wide it is. It's huge. It's this huge bowl. And then they would have had to have either intentionally filled up this basin or allowed it to fill naturally, and then start using this location as a burial site. So all within a 100-year time span, they're carving this huge thing out of the bedrock, removing massive amounts of andesite, which where did that end up? I don't know. I mean, could it be like what was broken into rubble for the walls? I don't know. I genuinely have no idea where all of this material went. And then it gets filled in, and then they start using it as a burial pit. So there are some major like red flags when you try to ascribe all of this to the Inca. You go back to the cave, which I think I might. No, I don't. Okay, but you go back to the vitrified surfaces. Again, that's found in Tiwanaku. How does it get to Cusco if the Tiwanaku never came to Cusco? There has to be something before. This is the Chavín de Hontar site, which is further north. So I've been focusing on the south of Peru. If you remember the maps, right? We're looking at like the Wari area, the Tiwanaku area, and the southern Inca area, because we really don't find this grand Inca architecture in northern Peru. There are some isolated exceptions. There's the terraces are largely located in southern Peru. There's millions of terraces in southern Peru. There's one location where there's a bunch of terracing in northern Peru, and in that location you also have small examples of this like Hanan Pancha Inca style work. And out in Bolivia, you again have like a couple isolated little examples where you have a couple boulders that have this Hanan Pancha. They've got the windows carved into them and stuff. But for the most part, there is a pretty strong concentration of this type of architecture in the southern central Peru, if you will, between like Lake Titicaca and the coast, essentially. This is in northern Peru, and this is, what did I just say it was? The Chavín de Hontar, right? And it's the only example of circular pillars that I've seen in Peru. There's two of them here. And they also have the same style of construction as the Wari, as, using these big slabs. They used slabs. Lots of these slabs, very kind of similar to the Wari, but I see the Chavín as distinct. Northern Peru is distinct. This is some of their mud construction, right? Besides Chavín de Hontar, they were not doing a lot of megalithic construction until we find a site like the Wari archaeological site and we go, oh crap, they were doing so much more than we realized. But this is largely what they were doing. And it was quite impressive. I mean, you can see, the detail on the motifs down here. It's beautiful and, intricate, and it was huge. It was a huge, huge place. It largely doesn't exist anymore, but it was, I imagine, very magnificent. This is some of the tunnels underneath Chavande Hontar. This is one of the vessels. They think this was a condor and the beak was broken off. It does have wings, so potentially. These are large, though. This is, it's big. I only have a drawing, and I didn't save it because it was only a drawing, but they did have a drawing of a native holding this cup, and he was holding it in two hands, and it was like this big. It's big. These things are, if you notice, in a totally different position than they were in the previous pictures. This stuff is getting all moved around. And that's the next thing I think that I'm going to highlight. Yes, which is the reconstruction and the destruction of all of these sites. So this is hopefully this, I realize I'm not necessarily tying all of this narrative together yet. I'm going to try and do that at the end. I'm just trying to present information currently. So hopefully I'm not like losing you guys hopefully you're following along. This is the Kala Sasaya at Tiwanaku. Okay. And here's an old sketch of how it used to look. Here is the modern reconstruction. And I want to emphasize that this is not a rebuilding. They didn't take the blocks that they found there and reassemble this. Some of these were found there, like these spouts were found there. But all of this, and it looks like some of this down here might be original, maybe, but like all of this is modern cut stone that was transported there and added to this construction. This is not even a reconstruction of the ancient materials. This is a total modern construction here. Some photos of what it looked like back then. And you can see on the side of here that same seating style that we have in the Inca construction. So again, this is definitely pre-Inca. This is absolutely pre-Inca. No one else in the world constructs like this except for whoever was in Peru. And you're telling me that a civilization that had no connection to the Inca was separated by 1,000 years, they decided to build like this, and then the Inca, 1,000 years later, with no knowledge of it, they just then decide to build like this as well? No, there's clearly a connection to an older civilization here. Another old photograph of not Machu Picchu, of Tiwanaku. It looks like some of this has been painted in the background to me. Am I crazy? Maybe, who knows, whatever. And then again, that seating style. So this is at Tiwanaku, the same seating style that you see in Inca construction, but there's no connection. Sure. Okay, more of the pillars, some of the blocks, right? We've seen the H blocks, right? And they're all unique. You can see here, this back is totally different. Like every block is different. They're not all the same, but there's also a lot more than just the H blocks. They've got all kinds of strange, weird blocks in here, all kinds of weird stuff, which I think I hope I linked it in the description. If not, I'll link it later. And if not, I tweeted it. I tweeted a fantastic book. If you want to look at images and read and learn about the Wari, really, really fantastic book. Actually, not about the Wari. I found another book about the Wari. I didn't link that one. The book I linked is about Tiwanaku, rather. And it's where I got a lot of these images, but there's so much more in that book. It's really, really good. And this is the Kala Sasaya before construction. Now these all have modern walls built, right? Another photo from Tiwanaku. I think this is hay or mud or something in the back. That's not the ancient construction, though, but these are. And Tiwanaku was 1,000 years ago. Like, what caused this level of destruction? If the Tiwanaku built this 1,000 years ago, you can imagine it was in good shape when they built it, right? They're not building it in a destroyed state. So 1,000 years ago, this was intact. The Inca didn't destroy it. The Inca revered this site. The Inca tried to repair this. The Tiwanaku, I assume, tried to repair this. Like, what the hell happened to this site. These blocks are massive and they're all destroyed, and it's destroyed to the point that no one can make sense of it anymore. There have been several attempts at like trying to recreate what this place looked like, and they're all different and no one has any idea. But this was a very impressive site at one point, and then it got majorly destroyed. Very, very impressive, very intricate blocks, all destroyed. Some more old pictures, just some interesting features. Clearly something was seated in that. That's like a pillar base. Would wood go in that? Would other stone go in that? We have no idea how this was all reconstructed. Everything there is modern. And the thing is, it's not unique. While the Kala Sasaya is probably the most egregious example of this in Peru, this is not unique. And I want to highlight different aspects of that, which I'll get into in a second. But this is, trying to keep all these names straight in my head. They're just rapidly flickering through my head. Sacsayhuaman. And after some rainfall, part of the wall collapsed. This has happened a few times. You can see they have supports up. There's supports all over these walls now, trying to keep this place intact. The idea that this is 12,000 plus years old, as a lot of people want to suggest, I have such a hard time believing, because you have, when the Spanish arrive, it's fully intact. You can see like there's maybe some missing blocks up here and stuff, but this wall is completed. This is fully intact. So could it be that the Inca repaired it? They found it and repaired it, and that's why it's intact? Maybe. But again, this is limestone. It's subject to acid rain and things like that. I don't think you're seeing Sacsayhuaman in as good of condition as you do when we find it if it's 12,000 years old. We're actively watching its degradation within our lifetime. Okay, does that mean the Inca did Sacsayhuaman? I'm really not sure. I know a lot of people immediately go, no, that's impossible. It's far too impressive for him. But you look at what the Inca did accomplish. They've got hundreds of miles of roads. The roads are fairly, I don't know if sophisticated is the right word, but they're good roads. They're quality roads. They're pretty high quality roads. They have hundreds of miles of retaining walls that go along with them. And they're not this huge, cyclopean masonry, but you look at the retaining walls and they're also like really, really well fitted. They're a lot more just like kind of globular shapes, but they're really well fitted still. And they're just a retaining wall for a road. You've got millions of terraces, farming terraces. They're literally terraforming entire mountains, right? You've got all of the water management, which that could be, pre-Inca that they repaired as well. And there's nothing grand scale like you find in Rome. Like you're not transporting water across a country, but they were very effective at managing water on more local scales within sites. So, the Inca are undeniably doing very, very impressive things. And I genuinely don't know where to put the cutoff of what was theirs and what wasn't. I think I highlighted fairly well that it is pretty clear that there was something before the Inca. You can look at all the Hanan Pancha, and that just kind of becomes evident just looking at the Hanan Pancha, but I also highlighted a few specific examples. But is this pre-Inca? I genuinely don't know. Could the Inca have done Sacsayhuaman? Maybe. It's hard for me to believe that it's really super ancient, Sacsayhuaman. Here we have Machu Picchu, right? And the obvious reconstruction. So I've ascribed this to Inca reconstruction in the past, and here we have a really well built on the other side, still intact. But here we can see that, that side that was loose over there, it's still standing, and the other side that's more intact is actually, was reconstructed after the Inca. A lot of this stuff has been reconstructed after the Inca. So much of this stuff has been reconstructed after the Inca. And so much has been destroyed after the Inca as well, not just by the Spanish, but by locals. Here, big blocks. Those are put back in place now. here's a giant gate from Tiwanaku that's being used in an adobe hut, right? This is a while ago, and you can find examples. This is the small town near Pumapunku, and this is an example of one of the Pumapunku blocks being used in their buildings, right? So these have been quarried by the locals. These have been quarried by the Spanish. They've been blown up by the Spanish. And they've been reconstructed multiple times by, again, the locals and the Spanish and others. So trying to make sense of what was actually going on in the past, almost impossible. Here we have Ollantaytambo, and we're about to see that Ollantaytambo was very clearly destroyed and was in a ruinous state when it was, at least by the 1800s. But interestingly, the oldest depictions have this wall fully intact, the biggest, most impressive wall with these, interesting little channels right in between. That was fully intact, right? Oldest picture, fully intact. You can cross your eyes there and get a 3D image. It's pretty cool. But this is also Ollantaytambo, right? And clearly this block has been moved. It's been stacked upon these blocks. So this is like the 1800s. There's already been repair here. And why are you repairing it if it's not destroyed? So this is like an ordered state. This is a more ordered state than it was even originally found in. This is all modern repair, right? These blocks were not in these places. These blocks certainly weren't, but even these big blocks, these have been placed there in modern times. This has all been moved and reassembled. There, that looks pretty intact. And you can see that's intact back there. But a lot of this, and there's not great pictures of this portion here in the past. I just wasn't able to find any, unfortunately. Ignore the arrow, just showing you the terrain. You can see, this has obviously been massively cleaned up in modern times. These blocks have all been moved. This was all full of those giant blocks laying around. And there's still some there, right? I thought this was in a different part of the presentation, but going back to the Kalasasaya, this is another structure of the Tiwanaku. So this is further east than Tiwanaku, and it's a hell of a lot smaller, but it's similar type of layout to the Kalasasaya, similar looking blocks here. It hasn't been excavated, and there's one other site that had some ground penetrating radar that it also shows similar things. So, is this Tiwanaku? This is pretty small scale here. But you have, again, those like seatings for other stones to go in there. Are they repurposing old stones from this lost civilization? Is this from the lost civilization? Or did the Tiwanaku do this themselves? The lines really do become hard to distinguish. These are old photos from Tiwanaku. So early excavations from Tiwanaku. And you can see different construction styles within here. There's like looser fitting, not perfectly shaped. And then over here you have very clean, very flat, very smooth, very tightly fitted blocks. And then you have those pillars again. A little closer look. Very, very clean blocks here. Those, and you find other blocks like that at the Kalasasaya. This is a different structure at Tiwanaku. When they excavated the Kalasasaya, what was still buried beneath the earth, there were walls that looked very much like this. So it seems like there's an older structure, and then it seems like there's the Tiwanaku constructing and repairing on this site. And then also quite likely the Inca as well. What's this? The ladder built of carelessly fitted stones appears like an afterthought. The compartments are not of one design, but seem to reflect two distinct construction episodes. Even the archaeologists are acknowledging that, there's two different things going on at Tiwanaku. Yeah. Just some interesting old photographs that I haven't seen before. And again, so over here, very reminiscent to the Sun Gate at Ollantaytambo. And this is obviously smaller scale, but you've got a big old block, and then you have these smaller blocks stacked in the middle, these thinner blocks stacked in the middle, and then a little L shape at the top. Very much like what we see over at Ollantaytambo. Big blocks with the smaller blocks stacked in between. Is that another connection? Quite possibly so. You've got the T-clamps, you've got the strange blocks with the drill holes, you've got the vitrified surfaces, and maybe you've got this as well, all connecting Cusco to Lake Titicaca, to Tiwanaku. And then here, more of those, strange blocks. And this is clearly reused, right? So this is reconstruction here. You have one of those strange Tiwanaku, the high technology Tiwanaku blocks. And then you have nicely fitted blocks, but are those also reused? Who knows? But it's obviously reconstruction. More strange blocks from Tiwanaku. More of the canal from Tiwanaku. And here's a rather interesting thing. So this is something that you see around Peru fairly frequently. An unfinished step. So this is all finished. This is all clean and cut and perfect. And then you have these 1, 2, 3, 4 blocks in the middle where they're carving it in situ. They have to shape off the top. They have to shape the step here and bring it all level. And I don't know about you guys, but like if I were a stonemason, I'm pretty sure that's not how I would do it. I'm pretty sure that's not how we do it today. Like you don't place the blocks and then shape the blocks. You shape the block and then you place it. But that doesn't seem to be what we see in Peru. And there's several examples of this. And it's just really, really strange. Really strange. Really strange. More of the canal, more of these blocks. And again, the only other place you really see these big rectangular blocks is at Chavan de Hontar, which I'm suggesting is a separate culture. There's a lot of distinct differences between the northern Peru and the southern Peru. Okay, so that is all the organized images I had. That's a great book. Go look up that book. That's the book I was talking about. But these are just some other images that I saved. You have the cholpas, which at one point in time, I was trying to incorporate these into the theory of, like the natron theory and geopolymers. So you have the vitrified glassy surfaces at Tiwanaku and at Cusco. And then you have these cholpas around Lake Titicaca, which are all built on mounds. They all appear like they would be watertight, or they were constructed potentially to be watertight. You've got these weird holes in the stones here, potentially to, put another stone in and put the geopolymer around and bond it so it's more watertight. I don't really know. But I was at one point suspecting that these were like chemical storage for geopolymer, and maybe they were. But I really don't know. This has nothing to do with the Inca, just a pretty darn cool picture I found. And just the size of this thing. These are allegedly for burials. You'd bury some people in there. I don't know. That glassy surface on the cave. Some of the really, really impressive work, which you find similar things to this in Machu Picchu. I think I have a picture later. Not quite like this. I mean, this is like over the top, right? I don't know what's going on here. A lot's going on here. But you do find some similar features in doorways and such at Machu Picchu. I mean, what is going on here? I honestly have no idea. This is the Coricancha in Cusco, though. And again, like evidence that they're working these things in situ. You see this all over the place where it sure seems like they're finishing the blocks, in situ, which for finishing a surface like that, maybe that's more normal, but strange on those other blocks, more glassy surfaces. Some of the similarities, right? You see at Machu Picchu, where you've got like hinges for doors, and this is a bottle from I think this one's from Chavan de Hontar. But I think this one is from the Wari culture. This is a ceramic Wari vessel. Not a great quality image, and I can't really make out what that is, but it looks pretty cool, whatever it is. Maybe some ceramics. All right. So let's discuss this stuff. That was all I had to present. Let's discuss this stuff. I'm going to read through chat real quick, and then I'm going to open up also the phone lines, okay, and see if I can organize my thoughts. I do have thoughts on this. We'll see if I can get them all out. Yeah, man, I was struggling. So I was literally sweating, like, because I gave myself enough time to organize my images, but then it just would not work. I couldn't rename my files. My computer wouldn't let me rename my files, and it just kept like working again and then not working again, and then and so it took so much longer than I expected, and I was worried I was going to have to cancel the show. Yes, Boob Poop Lake, and not only is there Lake Titicaca, but there's another nearby lake, I believe, named Lake Pupu, if I'm remembering correctly. It's something like that, though. Gotta keep them excavated. Yeah, so like some of the tunnels, that's at Chavan de Hontar, they allege that, that some of the tunnels were for drainage and ventilation, but also ceremonial purposes. The archaeologists, they really have no idea. I do not. Should I? Yes, that's what I was realizing when looking for the Wari stuff. I don't know. Maybe it still does exist in Spanish, but it doesn't exist on the English internet. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I don't know what those giant things were. They're huge. There's speculated sacrificial altars, stargazing pools. You fill it up with water and you look at the stars. They really have no idea. And 5% of that Wari site has been excavated. And before they did those excavations in 2014, like I said, the archaeological opinion was basically that the Wari weren't capable of working stone like that. They would make those loose fitted walls with mud mortar, clay mortar, and that's what they were capable of. Now in 2014, that's out the window. Okay. Yes, it does. Viracocha, their god, was born at Lake Titicaca, and he constructed Tiwanaku. According to Inca myth, Viracocha was born there, and he constructed Tiwanaku. There's also part of the Inca myth. They do have like stories of like gods and giants that were on the land before them and shaping the land before them. Details are fairly sparse, but it seems to be a reference to like the Hanan Pancha style construction, the bedrock that's just shaped with like a butter knife, apparently a hot knife through butter. So it would seem that the Inca recognized that Hanan Pancha at the very least came before them, and they revered it. This was like sacred construction of these greater beings that came before them. Yeah, maybe, and it could just be my ignorance, and maybe it is, but like that looks really strange to me when you have, this perfectly formed thing, and then in the middle you've got these 4 stones that still need completely shaped. Maybe that's totally normal, but it was strange to me. Okay, so one of the other things I didn't cover is the medical expertise. I've covered this before, but because I really have been trying to honestly look at this and figure out, okay, what is likely Inca, what is likely pre-Inca, and it truly does get difficult. And I know it's really easy to just look at like the impressive megalithic work and be like, oh, that they couldn't have done that. That's too impressive. It's too much. That's obviously older. And I'm really not so confident in that. Like we look at trepanning. So trepanning is drilling a hole in your head, typically done when you get blunt force head trauma, your skull's fractured, and you need to relieve the pressure so you remove a chunk of the skull. We do this today for that exact same reason with a 73% survival rate. 73%, and that's immediate survival rate, not months down the line, but did you make it through like the next 24 hours after surgery? The only way to measure survival rates in ancient times is to look to see if the bone has healed. If the bone's healed, they survived, and it takes months for that to heal. So in Inca times, they had a 70 to 90+% survival rate, depending on the location and depending on the time. So they were doing this surgery for the same reason as we do it today, blunt force head trauma. They were a warlike culture. They were always at war, a lot of head injuries, okay? So they were performing this surgery a lot, and they got really, really good at it. Significantly better at it than we are today. Significantly better at it than we are today. So, you know, we look at what they did accomplish, millions of terraces, hundreds of miles of roads, brain surgery, better than we do it today. And, you know, it starts to seem a little bit silly to be dismissive of the capabilities of the Inca. But then I also highlighted those issues where there clearly is pre-Inca construction. And you have the Inca themselves talking about how they don't explicitly say it, but it's suggested in their myths that the Hanan Pancha, at the very least, was already present when they occupied the area. Okay, well, obviously the Wari didn't do this stuff. All they can build is loose stone walls, except now we know that's not true. The Wari were pretty impressive themselves. The Inca were from 400 or 1400 to 1500. The Wari were from 1000 to 1400, and the Tiwanaku were before that. Okay. But the Wari architecture doesn't match the Inca architecture. So what about an evolution? Is it really just the mainstream idea that, well, the Wari were far more talented than we thought they were, far more capable than we thought they were, and the style clearly changes with the Inca, but is that the Inca taking the abilities of the Wari and further developing them and just developing their own style? It really does become difficult to delineate and try and demarcate what is Inca and what's pre-Inca. There obviously is pre-Inca work, but I'm not so confident that like the Inca couldn't have done Sacsayhuaman. And if they could have done Sacsayhuaman, why couldn't they have done pretty much everything else we see? And one of the reasons why I focus on Sacsayhuaman is, again, because like we're seeing the degradation within our lifetime. The idea of Sacsayhuaman being thousands and thousands and thousands of years old is difficult for me to accept. But then you also have Ollantaytambo in the same area. And Ollantaytambo, and it is difficult we don't have great reports from the early Spanish about Ollantaytambo, about a lot of this stuff. But it seems to me that Ollantaytambo was already destroyed, I guess, when the Spanish came. And the Inca were in the process of trying to reconstruct and repair it. So did they build it and then it got destroyed within Inca times? What the heck caused this destruction? And that was something I didn't focus on too much, is the destruction, because you obviously have the looting, you have the quarrying, locals taking stones, Spanish taking stones, and then you'd have the crazy Spaniards running around with dynamite and blowing these things up. That's like the explanation for all of this destruction that we see, but that doesn't make sense to me either. You have the Hanan Pancha, which seems to be specifically targeted by these lunatics with dynamite running around, because that is obviously destroyed all over Peru. It's been blown up. Like, I don't know how else to describe it. These giant boulders are flipped across fields upside down and split apart, right? Okay, so if the Spanish were running around with dynamite blowing all this stuff up because they were just so jelly that they couldn't handle the impressiveness of the Inca architecture, why weren't they blowing things up like Sacsayhuaman? They're blowing up the Hanan Pancha style stuff that's in the fields at Sacsayhuaman, but they're not blowing up the walls. So I don't think this destruction is from Spaniards running around with dynamite. And considering that you see the bulk of it focused on that Hanan Pancha, which seems to be the oldest construction, I think that was constructed. Some cataclysmic event happened, who knows what, destroyed all of that stuff. Then the Inca move in, and then they start constructing. And then you look at the destruction of the Inca sites, right? And again, that's rather confusing because it's like really focused. You know, you look at that Machu Picchu site and like one wall is still perfect. It's still pristine. It's still exactly, as it was. And then you look across the way, 20 feet away, and that wall is completely destroyed and destroyed to the point that it can't even be reassembled. Like those blocks are all badly damaged. Trying to make sense of the destruction is, well, it's as confusing as trying to make sense of the construction. Yeah, I don't know. I see evidence of pre-Inca, and it seems to be centered in roughly the Inca territory, that southern Peru territory spanning from Tiwanaku to nearly the coast. And then you do have like these random isolated examples in Bolivia and northern Peru. Was that just small groups of explorers from whatever civilization, be it Inca or pre-Inca, that was going out, and they took those skills and did a little construction in these remote sites? Like, I did have a working theory. I did have a solid, well-built theory, and I had about 18 of them for Peru. I have gotten to the point where I'm like, oh, I'm right there. I'm at the end. Like, this theory is done. I just need the final little touches, and then I keep digging, and I find something that completely upends that entire theory, and I have to start from scratch. So I could have sat down and I could have presented a narrative to you guys, and I could have been convincing. I could have backed it up with images and logic and reasoning, and I could have presented a straightforward, here's what happened, here's who did it, here's when it happened. But I don't want to do that because I don't feel like that would be honest. I honestly don't have any idea what was going on in Peru. Like I said, it's obvious the Inca were very, very impressive, and it's not clear to me where their ability stops, but it is also obvious that there was pre-Inca construction, very, very impressive construction. And there's connections between Tiwanaku and Cusco, which doesn't seem to be through the Inca or through the Tiwanakans. So some previous civilization was constructing the Hanan Pancha and constructed Tiwanaku. Who knows how much of Cusco they constructed? I really struggle to delineate between pre-Inca and Inca and Cusco. And the Wari. The Wari are far more impressive than they have been given credit for. We still have to excavate and see what else is still to be discovered with the Wari. What else is still to be discovered for all of these cultures? I think there's a great deal still. Hopefully more archaeological work is done. I'm not going to hold my breath too much. Archaeologists move at a snail's pace. Peru, the Minister of Culture, is pretty reserved. They don't give a lot of permission. So we're probably not going to find out anytime soon. But hopefully, at the very least, you enjoyed some of those old pictures I dug up for you and the Wari Archeological site that I exposed for you guys. Good God, I dug so much to find that Wari Archeological site. That was because, I knew it existed. I knew there was more to be found. I could see just enough to see that there was more, but finding it was such a hunt. So if anyone wants to call in, please feel free. Feel free to call in. If not, I'm going to cover a little bit of drama in the alternate history community at the moment, and then that'll be the show. So let me share my screen again. Let's see, do I still have it open? I had it open, but I don't anymore. So let me find it. I'll find it. Not a problem. Won't take me long. Here we go. And share this tab instead. So Steen, I believe it's Christine. I believe it's a female. I believe it's a woman. I kept referring to her as a man. But Steen Gertie's here released the vase data for Caroli's scans. And this is what she had to say. All 19 precision analysis are now published for the Petrie Museum vessels. The data seems to further point towards the tale of two industries proposed by Uncharted X. Do keep in mind that these artifacts were Petrie's teaching materials. Sadly, though, Artifact Foundation is now trying to block my publications of the research reports. I am going to present it all to you today, however. Just a few hours ago, I received a legal demand letter from Karoli Poca threatening legal action within the Trade Secrets Directive should I as much talk about these scans. Scans of ancient artifacts from our shared collective history are now by some regarded as trade secrets. There's power to be had if you can control the narrative and keep the vase scans from the public. Apparently, these objects still induce greed and ownership fantasies in humankind, as they have probably done for millennia. The vessel scans were shared with me freely, and I was asked, without compensation of any kind, to run them through my new analytic software and create a precision report for each artifact. Apparently, Artifact Foundation now sees these reports with my copyright information on them as their private internal documents, not to be seen by others. They are now trade secrets. I have been analyzing the Petrie Museum scans for the Artifact Foundation for the last 5 months, 100% free of charge, freely sharing all findings and reports with them, answering all their questions about the analytical methods, etc. I agreed to carry out the work for free on the basis that I would publish the reports in my name. However, as soon as I mentioned it was time for my name to appear together with the reports, I was thrown under the bus with the final words, "My suggestion is if you want to demonstrate your work, use the STL file from the OG vessel that was released publicly." Holy shit! As has always been the plan and was always the agreement with Artifact Foundation from the start, the reports will be released freely for all those to see and use. They are now available under a Creative Commons license on my website. I hope everyone will use this new data to deepen our understanding. I have also uploaded an overview with the precision score and an overview of the circularity measurements on my website. This gives a good overall view of the findings in the Petrie Museum vessels. So I saw the... There I am. Could you guys hear me? I don't think you could even hear me. So I saw this when it came out, but I didn't comment on it last week because I wanted to give Karoli an opportunity to respond, and he refuses. All he will say is that the data was not final, it wasn't peer reviewed, and we didn't give permission to release it. I don't want to cast... I don't know Karoli. He's an unknown to me. I know he popped up out of nowhere and was all of a sudden in the middle of the vase scan project. I don't believe through Ben, though. Like, he himself started scanning these vases and just he really just popped up out of nowhere. It was a strange entrance to me. I didn't know what to make of him then. I'm still not sure what to make of him now. But this certainly doesn't look good on Karoli. Like, he's not defending himself. He's not denying any of the allegations. And it sure looks like he's being a major asshole to Stein. There was never any agreement. There was clearly never any agreement that Stein wouldn't show this data. And it seems like the agreement was explicitly that she would. I don't know if that was explicit or not, but it definitely wasn't explicit that she wouldn't. Yeah, man, I don't know. And I don't know where his motivations lie. I don't know where his allegiances lie. It's kind of weird to talk about allegiances with this because, like, you shouldn't have them. The allegiance should be to the truth. But a lot of people do have allegiances. The mainstream has an allegiance to the narrative, right? And a lot of alternate people have an allegiance to their narrative. I don't know where Karolyi's lies, but he's looking pretty ugly right there with that. I really hope. It seems like the legal threats didn't hold any teeth. She's in a different country, so like he can't actually do anything to her, which is good. I'm glad, but it's sad to see, and it's the kind of drama that I definitely don't want to see with these vases. Like, share the information openly. It needs to be open. Fuck peer review. He's all about, it wasn't peer reviewed yet, dude. Here's why I hate peer review, and this seems to be. From the little bit that Karolyi has said, it seems he has this mentality, is that the data should not be released to the public. The data should be released to a small handful of peers. They review it, and then they tell the public what to think about it. That seems to be what Karolyi wants here. And if that's the case, an extra fuck you on top of, the fuck you for all the stuff you did to Stein, like, fuck peer review. Fuck that noise. It's so fucking bullshit. That, we can't release all the data to the public. The public can get an abstract. They don't get any of the raw data. The raw data goes to peers who then tell the public what to think about it. Fuck you. Fuck your peer review. Fuck all that noise. Open source the data. The vases, they need to be open sourced. And I don't know. Again, I don't want to cast, like, maybe there's more details that'll come out. Maybe it's not as bad as it looks, but it looks really bad right now. The other drama that I wanted to highlight was Jimmy Corsetti. I really want to like Jimmy Corsetti. Jimmy Corsetti has been definitely a net positive for the alternate history community. He's a very effective message deliverer. He can drum up attention and get people to pay attention to him and to listen to him and, be fascinated by him. Like, Jimmy's really, really good at interacting with the public. So, and he's done good things. Like, the trees at Göbekli Tepe were removed because of Jimmy. Got to give him credit where credit is due. He made that happen, and good for him. But since getting those trees removed, I think maybe he's letting it go to his head and affect his behavior or something. Because like, he's been successful this whole time and his behavior's been fairly consistent. But now that he's actually like affected real world change, I think he's like going, I can just demand things and they'll happen now. So there's two things going on with Jimmy. One is he will not stop slandering Marcel Foti. I had Marcel Foti on the show, and he's a controversial figure. I do understand why people don't like him. I think there's fair criticisms that a lot of people have of Marcel Foti. I can understand why people don't like him. But he's not lying about the chemistry. He can melt granite. So can you. Anyone can. It's simple chemistry. And he posted a video of him doing just that, of melting a granite block and then chopping it up with a putty knife because it was soft now. It had been melted. And Jimmy goes, "This is a fake video. You're a grifter. You're a liar. You're lying to your audience. You can't do this. It's impossible." And I go, wow, ugly mistake, bad mistake. You really should double check to make sure that, when you're accusing someone of being a fraud, that you're right. But I was totally ready to forgive Jimmy and move on. And I think most people were. Like, people make mistakes, But then Jimmy comes back a few weeks later and he doubles down. And he's continued doubling down, I believe, like 5 times now. He will not stop calling Marcel Foti a fraud and a liar and accusing him of faking his videos. There are dozens of people that have tried to explain to Jimmy at this point the chemistry and why this is real and shown other examples of people doing the same thing. And he just will not accept it. And he will not stop calling Marcel Foti a fraud and a liar and a grifter. Absolutely unacceptable. Absolutely retard behavior, dude. It's not hard to verify whether or not he's telling the truth. And you refuse to do so, and you just keep doubling down and accusing him of fraud. And now it's to the point where I don't know if Jimmy can back out of this. And there's a lot of people. Jimmy has a large audience. They believe him. They take him at his word, and they're all jumping on the train slandering Marcel Foti. Again, plenty of reasons to not like the guy. I'm sympathetic to people who don't like him, but this is bullshit. This is disgusting. And you're a fucking clown, Jimmy. You're a fucking clown for acting like this. Get your shit together and stop slandering a man when you're just full of shit. So that's a pretty big issue, and it's really, really impacted my respect for Jimmy. I still want to like him, but he's making it fucking impossible with this bullshit. And then recently he was on Piers Morgan, and I think he's done a fantastic job, as I've said before, as I said earlier, of being a messenger for alternate history. I think he's a net positive, a pretty big one. I appreciate him. But his appearance on Piers Morgan, again, what a clown you're being, Jimmy. He is out here aggressively demanding that they drill into the Giza Plateau 2 kilometers to check the scan data, the SAR scan data, and verify if it's real. Don't verify. I can't believe, this is how you know you've gone full retard, is because I'm wholeheartedly agreeing with Flint Dibble here. I hate Flint Dibble, and I am agreeing with him 100%. The next step is not to drill into the Giza Plateau. That would be absolutely retarded. It would be destructive. It would be reckless. It would be expensive. It would be retarded. The next step is to verify that the SAR data is actually legitimate. Scan a known structure, a deep known structure like Darren Kuyu, because they've used it for surface scans going down a few meters, and they have recreated structures that are just below the surface of the earth, but they haven't demonstrated that they can do this at depth. So scan Darren Kuyu, prove that it works, prove that you can recreate Darren Kuyu, and then we can start talking about exploration under the Giza Plateau. But Jimmy also is going, it's so simple, it's so easy, it's so cheap, we could do it tomorrow. We could drill 2 kilometers down tomorrow and be down there tomorrow, and it'd be so fast and cheap and easy. Even for just a straight standard drill, you're looking at a couple $1 million to go down 2 kilometers. It's not cheap, okay? Secondly, he's not talking about drilling straight through the Giza Pyramid. That would be insane, truly insane. He's talking about coming at an angle from, the side of the Giza Plateau and drilling in, down 2 kilometers, over 2 kilometers, because now you're at an angle. Do we even have the technology to do that? I honestly don't know. I know we can drill 2 kilometers straight down with gravity assisting us, but do we have anything that can drill at an angle for over 2 kilometers while maintaining its trajectory, not being pulled down by gravity, just drilling straight down over it? I'm pretty sure we don't even have that fucking technology, Jimmy. But tell us about how cheap and easy and fast it is, and how reasonable it would be for us, and how it's stupid for us to not be drilling already. On top of that, he goes, it would absolutely not cause any damage whatsoever. There would definitely be no damage. Well, there's a whole lot of other structures underneath the Giza Plateau that haven't been fully explored and documented. What if we drill into some other man-made structure along the way and we damage that? That would be pretty bad, right? Or, I don't know, what about all of the groundwater? I'm genuinely not an expert in this, so I really can't speak with any authority, but you're drilling into groundwater, you're opening up cavities to other cavities. Are you potentially displacing water and changing pressures and potentially causing all kinds of damage and instability, and maybe a fountain spraying out of the Giza Plateau? I don't know. Maybe. I'm pretty sure Jimmy doesn't know either. So why the hell is he aggressively demanding that we must drill, baby, drill, baby, drill? I think the fact that he got the trees removed has gone to his head, and he's just like, I can just demand things now. We don't need faces of alternate archaeology behaving like this. Jimmy, I really want to like you. I have liked you in the past. I think you're still a net benefit, but just slow down a little bit and think a little more before you speak. You weren't seeming to make these massive blunders a few months ago. Something has changed around the time the Göbekli Tepe trees were removed. I don't know what it is, but get back to yourself, Jimmy. I really want to like you, but you make it impossible when you keep slandering people, and when you go on national television and you just act like a clown. So, all right, that's it. That's the content. One last thing. I don't think I'll have an episode next week. I'm going to take a little break. I just want to take a little break for one thing. And two, there is a project that I want to create. And, I talked a while back about how I'm trying to find like a meaningful way to contribute and realizing that this YouTube channel isn't it. And I need to do something more. And I think I've found that. I think I've found a way to do that. And now I just have to actually make that happen. And it's going to be tricky. And it's going to rely on some outside factors that I'm not in control of. But I'm hopeful and I want to work on that. And I need to focus on some other things in my life. So no episode next week, probably be back the week after that. But it's going to depend. I don't know how these things are developing. They're still in the air. So we'll see how they develop and how much time I'm able, whatever. Probably no episode next week though. Big things in the future, I hope. If I do manage to execute this project and actually do this will be, it's nothing crazy. Like it's not an original idea, but it's a desperately needed idea. And it's something that will massively help the community and actually, make pretty big strides in like progressing our understanding of the ancient past. So I'll update that on you when I can. It might be a while, but hopefully I can make something really cool happen. All right. Peace.